if I'm explaining AI to a group of journalism faculty or students, I'm really thinking about it through the lens of what's basic and what's advanced, because the basics are single jobs that someone wants done to help their job get done. The other is using AI and then taking action with AI based on that AI, and then doing the same again and again and again. And these scenarios down here have more to do with that. So as I dig in, just understand that we're going to cover the basics first. This application has 18 or 20 jobs that a typical journalist would need to do that could be accomplished with AI. Investigate a story, check facts, create a timeline, identify potential follow-ups based on what an article is. All of these things can be done by hand, but truth be told, based on what's out there and indexed on the internet already by these AI models, there is a lot of information that can come from this. So let's take a scenario. I want to create a timeline based on an article that has been authored previously. The first thing I'm going to do is pick my timeline. This is where storing things in an atomic way in a database is the way to go with AI. There will always be products that you can accomplish or you can buy to accomplish goals with AI, but if you really want something done, you should build it and accomplish it based on your needs. And here what I wanted to do was take an article, put in a URL, extract all the text from the article, and then make sure that a prompt that I wrote here is mixed with that, and it can then generate the output that I want. And in an administrative panel, I have my timeline created, but here I'm just going to say, okay, I want to create a timeline based on the Oklahoma City Thunder coming to Oklahoma City. This came from NBC News. It was the year they won the NBA championship. I was following it as a fan, and so let's just create that. When I get into the administrative part of this demo, you're going to see there is a prompt called timeline creation that is feeding into this output that you see. So this is going to say, okay, take that text, mix it with that prompt I just did, and then create a timeline. And there are a mixture of system and user properties that are at play if we were talking about development, but just think about it. We know what model we're using in the background. I've set it as an administrator. I know what prompt I'm using to determine a timeline because I'm the administrator. I set it in the code in the background. The user information is coming from the article because that's what's input as the URL. And then that article is scraping out all the text that gets stored in the database. So when I say create a timeline based on this article, the article consists of this text, and that's what's feeding into the model. Okay, so now I have my timeline. If I wanted to export it, I could in CSV or PDF. If I wanted to copy it into my story, I could. But part of what I want to do then is say, okay, well, let's look at other stories that we might possibly want to pursue. So I'll do a follow-up. And I'm going to use the same text, and I'm going to actually output it the same way. Execute. Now, if I were teaching a technical class, I would be digging into, well, when you click the button, it triggers an action. The action has a trigger that makes this show up here in the background because it delivers something somewhere. You know, there's all this technical explanation for what you're seeing. But really, you just need to think in terms of what is the system doing and what's the user putting in, and the output will be the mixture of that put into the model and output here. So these are the potential follow-up stories. These are the angles I could take to my next news meeting. And at the end of all these, I have a conclusion just to sort of like too long, don't read. I have loaded up test scenarios. So based on the audiences I'm talking to, I can load one. One or two of these is generally what's needed to talk about the administration of this app. And before I get to that, though, I want to talk about the difference between text creation, which I just showed you, and image and video creation. So I don't have video creation here because it's a lot like image creation. What I can do here is say, I want to generate an image. I'm going to generate an image of a cat sitting on a fence looking at a full moon that is smiling back at him. I'm going to do this as a clean piece of vector art. I'm going to give it a vibrant tone, and I'm going to do this from far away. If I wanted to set conditions on this to say avoid text or use AI to enhance this to create something better than what I prompted for, I could, but let's just generate the image. And as it generates, there are tips just for image generation that we should remind users, and I do. Be specific, use descriptive words, always mention the style, which we've input here as a variable so that they can't leave it out. We can force these things through pull-down menus, through different user experiences, but they can also just be things that generate text that feed into fields that go into the AI. That's where creating this net new may make sense depending on what you're trying to do. Because if I'm trying to generate out this image, I've set vector art as something that is choosable by the user. It doesn't have to be stipulated, but they can't miss it. And that's part of what we want to talk about. So here I have my image. I can look at it full size, download it, copy it. What advanced AI use cases might exist for journalists? And one of the easiest is just picking a photo for analysis. I'll do my side yard. All right, narrow outdoor alignment, lighting suggests daytime, clear weather, potted plant, wooden fence. The intent here is that if you had a photo that was for logging purposes, that it will do basic object detection based on this. And this is one of the benefits of AI. If we can argue about the ethical use cases of generating text and images, but identifying patterns and pattern detection is something that AI can do very well. So we want to be able to have that conversation independent of the ethics and be able to say to journalists, consider this, because when it comes to object detection in images and video, that is how a lot of the technology in airports works today. So there is a through line, and we need to get tomorrow's journalists to understand that today. All right, so back to our app use case. So we have analyzed photo evidence. This is where I cross the bridge and say, okay, well, now think about how we might do chained AI, which Chained AI is taking one output and making it be the input for the next output, and it be the input for the next output. I have done crisis management use cases for that scenario. So if we wanted to load a scenario and run an analysis based on how big of a deal it is and the stakeholders that may be involved and the business impact, these all become user inputs. And we'll say viral on social media, how quick we must respond, the legal implications. What we're really trying to show journalists is that even something like crisis communications, AI can be a complete utility, because while it cannot look at the details of an exact incident, it can look at past incidents and condense the learnings into patterns that allow us to act on them. So if I'm trying to generate a crisis plan for a problem, let's say a football game doesn't air because someone kicks out a cord in the conference room or something, who knows what it would be. We can advise the people who have to deal with the media, have to deal with the customers, and have to deal with the investors in a way that helps our business, the station, but also separates this out so that people who are journalists can see sort of how it works. So this use case is good for that. I also have used this to explain the significance of atomic content. What is atomic content? It is content that's not stored in documents, but that it is stored in a database in a structured way so that AI can take advantage of those fields in that database specifically. We want people to play, we want people to learn, we want people to prototype, and then we want to take the insights that we learn from all those phases and really move forward with an enterprise program that makes sense based on goals that we're actually trying to accomplish. And my goal in facilitating this was to show how we can use personas, meaning representatives of the people who might be in a university setting, and then create custom AI curriculums based just on them. So, Franklin Cole, it's your lucky day. Detail view. Franklin's an investigative reporter for the Capital City Post. I don't know what the capital city is, but whatever. We can use these attributes to say, based on what we know about investigative reporters, here's what they like, here's what they want, here are their concerns and dislikes, here are their needs and requirements. We can actually feed aspirations and goals, and then once we have this isolated in the database, we know how to generate workshop curriculums based just on Franklin. So if I go in here now and I'm like, okay, I want to choose a persona, Franklin. I'm going to do let's say it's going to be a strategic planning workshop, 3 hours long. I can generate a workshop agenda for Franklin, stage name. Here's the agenda, strategic planning for Franklin Cole. This is what it recommends I should cover. Here's examples I should have. Here's the things I should talk about from a thematic perspective. And then I have another prompt that says, based on who Franklin is and based on this agenda, now do research based on what I would need to know to hold this session. So I'm using this app to accelerate my own work as a consultant to say, okay, these are the use cases I might want to look at and fact find. If I had an assistant, and I don't, I'm an employee of one, I could assign this, but basically what I'm doing is I'm giving myself an acceleration against what I would need to train Franklin for this workshop. The other scenario we like to dig into is using AI to help journalists understand their navigation path within the industry. If you're a meteorologist, what you need to know, what classes you need to take, what courses or certifications you might pursue might cost money. And so, how can we give a use case in a university setting that says, hey, this is how you might use AI? So, I created a career navigation hub. Here, I'm going to say the investigative reporter for the Capital City Post. This is their likely career pathway analysis. Entry positions they should go for, what their arc should be 3 to 5 years, what their arc should be within 10 years. I can give this to Franklin and say, look, if you're really considering this, this is what it looks like out there. And this is what your education requirements will be. And this is your compensation range, from entry level to senior. It's whatever we want them to be, but what I've done is I've taken a persona, I've matched it with an agenda and with the learnings, and then I've put all those together in a prompt to say, okay, generate out a career pathway analysis for this person. That extends to people who need to do education planning. So if I'm in here now and I want to say, well, I am a college sophomore and I'm interested in investigative journalism, I can generate an education plan based on their tier, where they are. Are they in high school? Are they a sophomore? Are they this? Are they that? It's whatever I want it to be, but I'll go back to that theme because I have determined the chain of AI and how it all works from a flow perspective. One can inform the next, and that makes it an acceleration tool the more I use it. If I were just using it to generate things for Franklin on one end, that would be one benefit, but I can actually take this data, feed it back in, and generate more information. So a broad plan for an investigative journalist outside of Franklin might look like this. Here's what you need to take as an elective. Here's some good subjects. Here's what to dig in if you really think you're interested. Here's where to seek an internship. All of this stuff can be based on localization. So if I know I'm in Oklahoma, this is going to be unique. If I know I'm in Minnesota, this is going to be unique. The next thing we can do is say, what financial guidance can we give you and ROI? So as a data scientist, I've got people in my family who are interested in that. We can recommend popular career paths based on who people are, but we can also generate custom analysis based on anyone that we would want to identify. So as I dig into the administration part of this, just understand that I have not given how this looks probably the attention it deserves since I was the user. So as I walk through this, just be sympathetic. But the real thing I wanted to show you was the system prompts area of this. So for every single tool that I have, there is a prompt in the background that is running this. And so the timeline prompt I showed you earlier, this is the prompt that is powering that in the background. And as you see, it's got the segments stipulated in just written text, which is the beauty of AI. It's how it works. But down here, these are the variables that are stored in my database against some of the chained AI scenarios I talked to you about. So if I were covering timelines in a training workshop, I want to make some of the metadata available through my other apps or jobs or parts of this. Then I can pull it in. And so we want to tell the user, what variables are available for the prompt, but we want to make sure that the prompts are editable or can be edited by the end user, or at least someone who is a configurer, so that if the output is not what we like, we can refine it and be iterative about it. So, it's all based on wanting to make something work appropriately for the end user, and we won't know if something is accurate until we run use cases and say, is this accurate? So this is where we are treating AI as a first draft only. We are relying on subject matter experts or the experts who know the content to say it is accurate. The other parts of the administration dashboard really have to do with the parts that are fed in. So I have an area for the hero images, and if I wanted to edit one of the hero images, these are the fields. When I talk about atomic content, this is exactly what I'm talking about. We are having a form, author fills in the fields, chooses what they want, stores it in the database. That stores those values so that as I take action with AI in the future, those values are set and can be retrieved. And that's the importance of the data part of this conversation. Where is that data being stored? Who has access to it? And if they do have access to it, what actions can they take on it? Because if something is wrong and they got the wrong permissions on a file, just as we've seen in past experiences, the value's in the file, not in the fact that someone got it. I mean, it's consequential that someone got it, but the value of what they're going for, their incentive is the data. So that's how it works in the background. Now, if you're interested in one of these journalism workshops, reach out to me at jj@soundeffectdigital.com, and I would love to hear from you. Thanks. Bye-bye.